Wow, what a reception.
There you go.
Hey, what is going on, all you bus nuts, geeks, and enthusiasts out there? Welcome to another episode of Motorcoach World. My name is James. Now, if you didn't know already, I just got back from driving an all-electric double-decker bus across the United States of America. This entire trip was sponsored by ABC Companies and Proterra. And a huge thanks to the Cornell family, as well as all the wonderful people at ABC that spent countless hours making sure that we had what we needed to complete the trip. ABC also had Starlink installed on this bus so that I could do a live stream every day while I was on the trip, keeping viewers up to date on where we were and what was happening. Now, if you missed the live streams, feel free to go and check them out. They're still there in the live section of the channel and they're not going anywhere, so don't worry. So today, I'm gonna do a recap of what the trip was like, from the bus itself to the charging stations and everything in between. The goods, the bads, and the ugly. The bus we drove on this trip was a Van Hool TDX 25E double-decker motor coach. The coach was 45 feet long, or 13.7 meters for those of you in Europe, 13 feet 2 inches tall, or 4 meters, and a width of 102 inches, or 2.6 meters, and the bus came in at a weight of 62,000 pounds.
My God, that's a big ship. Not so big as her captain, I think.
Hey, thanks guys. Now the motor coach carried on board 22,000 pounds of Proterra lithium-ion batteries with a total storage capacity of 676 kilowatt hours. Now folks, there are all kinds of really cool specs on the coach that I won't go too deep into on this video, but if you want to check out all the technological wonders that this all-electric double-decker motor coach packed on board, check out ABC's website, www.abc-companies.com/van-hool-TDX25E. I also put the link down below in the description box so that you guys can click on it instead of trying to type all this in.
She's supposed to have transport drive.
And thanks, Sulu, but no, she doesn't.
What route do you take?
Now, we had several options when it came to picking out our route before the trip started. Obviously, we had to make sure that there were enough places to charge along the way, but the route we ultimately decided to take was the most southern route, utilizing Interstate 10 for the majority of our trip. One of the major deciding factors was due to the fact that the weather report indicated a record-scorching heat wave that would cover this entire area of the US, and I really wanted to push this bus to the limit and see how she would perform in 115-degree temperatures. The entire trip took 13 days to complete. We departed Newark, California, where we picked up the coach on the 26th of July and arrived in Winter Garden, Florida on the morning of August the 7th. During this time, we experienced the hot, dry deserts of California, Arizona, and New Mexico, transitioning through Texas into the hot and humid conditions of Louisiana, Mississippi, and Florida, experiencing temperatures of up to 114 degrees Fahrenheit. The entire route covered over 2,900 miles, and on board the coach were Dennis, his wife Tracy, my wife Lydia, my two kids Leah and Vera, and yours truly. Dennis and I co-drove the trip while my wife Lydia took care of the kids and worked remotely, as well as helped me do some of the live stream commentaries, and Tracy took care of the hotel accommodations and planned out potential charging points.
If you're really disinterested in my flight plans, why don't you look them up?
With 22,000 pounds of batteries on board, the bus could easily make 250 miles on a full charge. Having never driven an all-electric vehicle before, we played it safe and tried to never let the coach get below 50%. But there were actually times where we got the bus down to 20% due to broken Electrified America chargers not working, and we just had to bite the bullet and try to make it to the next charging station. We tried to utilize every charging station we could find on our route without skipping any, as they became far and few in between once we left the urban centers of California. Now, the Proterra batteries on board would only allow the coach to charge as fast as 150 kilowatt per hour, but it was still suggested that we try to find a 350 kilowatt charger, since the Electrify America chargers rarely supplied the charge rate that they advertised. Overall, it cost us roughly $2,000 in charging fees to complete this trip. But keep in mind, we did get several free charging sessions. Sometimes the charging station simply said this was a complimentary charge, and sometimes Electrified America gave us a free charge session after issues we encountered in the previous charge. That was really nice of them. On average, when using public charging stations, our cost per mile charging an electric vehicle came out to be somewhere between 70 to 90 cents a mile. Now, just to give you guys a comparison, after crunching some numbers, driving a diesel-powered coach on this same trip would have cost around 50 to 60 cents a mile. So it would actually be cheaper to drive a diesel coach when using public charging stations. Now, keep in mind, this calculation was based on diesel prices at the time we took this trip, and also based on the prices in Illinois, which is where I live. Throughout the entire trip, we could only utilize the Electrified America CSS-style charger plugs. All the other charge networks or brands of charging stations will either not fit our coach or they wouldn't charge our coach properly. We did try a few EVgo brand chargers along the way, but they would either error out during a charge or charge really slowly, resulting in a 5 to 7 hour charge time. The first and most obvious problem with the public charging stations was that the charging stalls were not large enough to fit anything bigger than a car or SUV. Now, this resulted in a lot of creative parking on our part with a bus the size of ours. We tried to get spots at the end of the charging stall so that we wouldn't be blocking other charging stations or trapping other cars in that were currently charging in their stalls. But sometimes that meant blocking other cars that were not charging but simply parked in their parking spots. This happened frequently at Walmarts or mall parking lots where they built charging stations in them. Now, I definitely get that these charging spots were definitely never designed to be used by a 45-foot long coach bus, but the designers definitely left out all the EV pickup trucks and SUVs out there that were pulling trailers and campers. Now, sometimes there were really long lines at these charging stations, especially in larger cities. There definitely tended to be a wait before you could actually get your vehicle to charge. And adding to the fact that half the chargers at these charging stations that we arrived at were either not working or derated, there were definitely a lot of tension and frustration amongst the EV car owners waiting for their turn, sometimes even causing fights. Now, we definitely got a few frustrated comments from EV car owners waiting to charge, and we had no choice but to block a few of the charging station stalls while we were charging our bus, but there was simply no way around them. Now, there were times we pulled up to a charging station and saw a charger was open while all the rest were occupied by cars, and we would count ourselves lucky that we arrived and there was one charging spot left. But after painstakingly maneuvering our bus up to the charger and plugging our bus in, we realized that the charger was unoccupied because it didn't work or had been severely derated. The worst thing about this whole scenario is that most of the time there's no way to tell until you've already plugged your vehicle up into the charging station that a charging station was either not working or charging at a really low rate. One of the things that was really annoying was also that the Electrify America app doesn't always accurately show the output of the charger. So you would never really know what kind of output the charger can really do unless you actually pulled up to the charging station and plugged your vehicle in. Now, that may not be much for a little Tesla or Rivian vehicle backing up and pulling in, but for a 45-foot long, 13-foot tall bus, that was a lot of time wasted. Now, sometimes if a charger was frozen on a certain screen or giving you error signals when trying to plug it into your vehicle, you could actually call the Electrify America customer support number, but sometimes you were met with really long hold times, which just added to the overall frustration. But on several occasions, they actually did answer the phone rather quickly. Once you do get them on the phone, they can actually restart the charger remotely, but most of the time that doesn't always help when the charger was derated because it was so hot outside. Now, a few times when I did call Electrify America, an operator named Dee helped me out. She was awesome to work with and always on top of it. I wish I could request the operator when you actually called Electrified America. So Dee, if you're watching this, you are freaking awesome, and I thank you for all the help you gave us on our trip, and you're definitely a credit to Electrify America. So Dee, thank you for all your help during our journey. Another problem we encountered was that the heat and direct sunlight on the charging hoses caused some of the chargers to really derate. Now, after arriving at a charging station running really low on juice, I mean, it was a scary realization that the charger that we waited an hour for and then had to painstakingly maneuver and back up to either didn't work or was charging at such a low rate that would have taken us over 7 hours to recharge. Now, my thought is Electrify America definitely needs to build canopies over these chargers to block the direct sunlight, causing them to overheat. But the canopies definitely need to be tall enough to fit a 13-foot tall vehicle. Otherwise, people like us on a really tall bus would definitely be stuck and out of luck, as we wouldn't even be able to get close enough to plug our bus in. Now, we actually did see a charging station in Kettleman City, California, in the middle of the desert that had a really nice tall canopy over it, and I was surprised that they didn't build them like this anywhere else. Now, this didn't really affect the charging in any way, but one thing I did notice was that almost every charging station we went to, the areas around them were just littered with trash. It seemed that no one was taking the responsibility to clean up around them, and either the EV owners or just people walking by the charging stations just dumped their garbage around the charging stations. And it made for a really unpleasant experience, and it just really shows the lack of care for these public infrastructures. Now, we realized that leaving our bus to charge while we went away to either eat or leaving the bus to charge overnight while we went to our hotel to sleep didn't always work. Several times we came back to realize that we had wasted a bunch of time because the charge had stopped 20 to 30 minutes in after we walked away. So if we actually had sat down to eat or sleep in our hotel room, we would have had to get up and go replug the charger and restart the session. And by the way, you can't just restart the session by using the app. You physically had to go to your vehicle and unplug and replug the charger. Now, sometimes really frustrated or disgruntled EV owners will actually purposely disconnect your charging session while you're away because they either want your spot or they're frustrated that you're taking up all the spots. And sometimes random people will actually just walk by and disconnect your charging station for reasons I can't even explain. Now, this actually happened to us several times during charging, and we actually walked away. And a few of the incidents, we weren't positive that that's what caused the charging to stop, but we were pretty sure that it was sabotage. With all that said, we definitely could not maintain a timed itinerary. When you pull up to a charger, it's just a crapshoot of how long it'll actually take for you to charge your bus. You can't actually predict it. Now, the best scenario being an hour and a half to 2 hours, and the worst scenario being 7 to 11 hours, depending on how fast the charging station was putting out power and how many times you had to go and replug in your vehicle. So bottom line is, if you actually had a timetable to keep or a timed itinerary to follow, you're probably not going to succeed when driving an all-electric motor coach relying on public charging infrastructures. Seriously, guys and gals, there was not a single day where something didn't go wrong, where you had to be creative and have almost an engineering geared mind to find solutions so that you wouldn't get stranded somewhere. Now, if there was one way I can describe the support we got from ABC during our trip, was that we felt like we were being monitored by NASA's mission control. Whether it was a weekday or a weekend, day or night, ABC's support team was always there for us. Danny Landry, ABC's technical services manager, actually had our telematics and tracking information up on his big screen TV at his house during the middle of the night, just to make sure that we were doing okay at all times. And James Mora, ABC's technical engineer, was actually in the middle of studying for his final exams for school, but stopped to answer every one of my calls. Literally was up night and day and was always there to assist us whenever we had an issue. Which, by the way, a huge congratulations to James Moore for graduating. I guess he passed his final exam despite all the distractions he had from me. And finally, I definitely don't want to leave out all the technicians and product support guys from ABC that actually came out to our bus and trailed behind us along the way, or just simply came out to assist us. Alberto Duran, Corey Capps, Jeff Gardner, and Jeff Bornt. Every one of these guys went way out of their way to make sure that we had help whenever we needed it, and I can't thank you guys enough. Now, despite all the frustrating charging sessions that never went right, the overall trip was actually very exhilarating for me and my family. We all had a blast and would definitely do it again. Now, for all of you bus drivers out there, keep in mind that we had no paying passengers on board. And despite not being able to keep our planned itinerary, we really didn't have a time constraint. I mean, ABC literally told us to take as long as we needed to get the bus to Winter Garden, Florida. Now, also during these long, arduous charging times, we took Ubers to go out and explore the area. For us, that meant shopping, trying out all kinds of local foods, and hitting the beach. Now, these are things you wouldn't actually be able to do if you were actually on a revenue trip driving a bunch of paying passengers. You would probably be sitting there making sure that nothing went wrong with the charging session so that you could actually get your group back on time. Now, the only real time constraint we did have was that we had to make sure that we got back by the 9th of August because my wife had to be back at work. She's the principal of a school and she did not want to miss the beginning of the school year. Guys, the bus drove great. The engine/propulsion system on board was very strong and responsive. The interior was extremely comfortable, and my kids absolutely loved the front seat on the second floor. And Tracy and my wife loved the tables on the first floor. Dennis is going to tell you what his favorite feature of the bus is.
It's the cup holder. It can hold as small as a little bottle of water. It can also hold a 44-ounce big gulp. It's wind resistant, and you can mount it anywhere you want. Way to go, Van Hool. I love this.
If you can't tell, the bus had no cup holder.
Also, keep in mind that this bus was not a prototype. There are hundreds of them out there in service currently, and they actually have a really solid track record when it comes to reliability and ruggedness. I mean, we proved that by driving one across the United States during a record-setting heat wave. Now, many of these buses are currently being used on the West Coast doing shuttling work for many of the big tech companies. And all of these buses actually don't run into any of the charging problems that we had on our trip because the company they currently service built their own private network of chargers specially designed to fit and charge larger commercial vehicles. We didn't have that luxury. Our cross-country trip with this bus took us outside of that safety net and put us at the mercy of the public charging infrastructure, or specifically Electrify America.
Well, the Electrify America sucks. I don't know what to say. They don't have their act together.
Well, folks, I hope you all enjoyed today's video. Go check out my live streams during the trip if you guys missed out on those, and stay tuned for the vlog that I'm working on that'll capture the entire trip on my other channel, J-Wing Vlogs. There's actually a lot of footage for me to edit right now, but I promise I'm working on it and I will release it in the next few weeks, so stay tuned for that. Remember, folks, if you're watching this, you are part of the Motorcoach world.